Hello SGD. Over the last few months, I've been here and there conducting a few experiments using Granite, challenging what's often described as impossible or impossibly long times to do, and just by through very cheap experiment, the materials, uh, just a matter of investing the time in there, and presented these videos, filmed them, put them up, so it's without a doubt, you can repeat this. This is not difficult at all. It's not expensive to do. Link to this previous version where I had straight striations and supposed circular saw marks, and I was able to replicate them in a short time with very primitive tools on, with what was known to have been used not just in the ancient times but up until recent times. There are the two stones I'll be working with now. They are split face, natural face granite. It's not that the saw marks were quite shallow, and in this one I've ironed out the mistakes I made in the previous one. Essentially, I can do at least 1.61 square feet in 2 hours from natural split face granite, which is essentially it's been plug and feather technique. So from a very rough face down to what's described as impossible precision technology, and I'll mention that a few times in here because there you can see where I'm using a light and running it across a very thin straight edge, not a thick straight edge as is often shown, and I'm able to create and pass that and create precision impossible flatness. It's actually quite easy to do. Again, you can replicate this. I'll go through the steps. Again, I filmed it and I'll show it. Some parts will be accelerated speed, but it's actually very easy to do and not as time consuming. Even compared to modern techniques, it's not that slow in connection to that. And even there you can see where I used a wooden block because that light technique is also a little, not as good as what they would say, but I have supposedly impossible task which can be done again very cheaply, very easily. I would challenge those of the lost ancient high technology / ancient aliens just to show me one example where they've actually done an experiment. They're quite quick to write people off, and even going to everyone's in cahoots, and suppressing information or planting information and so forth. Well, sort of put up or shut up at this sort of point. The abrasive I'll be using is a mix of corundum, aluminium oxide, known again in ancient times, mixed with some crushed sandstone and quartz, and I'm also using some crushed, the top right corner, that's sandstone that I used from a previous experiment. So that's the abrasive. You don't even need the corundum because of the quartz inside. You only really need, here's the basic rule when it comes to abrasive, like cuts like, diamond cuts diamond, granite cuts granite. So you don't need even the harder materials to do this. And so let's just get into it and just watch how it's done. And then I'll put, and again in next videos, I'm going to be just openly challenging the myth. So with this demonstration, I'm going to conclusively show how long it would take to hone or polish the surfaces in places such as Pumapunku in Bolivia and these H blocks. Some of them are very high, flat, let's call it, but there are also others that are partially finished. So the question is, how long would the completed ones would have taken, or how long would it take to complete the ones that are still not honed? And so again, this issue of flatness, precision, we'll get to that, but I'll be directly answering these supposedly unanswerable questions, therefore evidence of ancient machining, lost high technology. So we can demonstrate this can be replicated. We'll see how it's done, and I'll be able to directly answer these questions of how long it took to do a stone such as this. Notice the sound. So I am grinding, but this is now more of a slippery sound. So if we add and keep adding the abrasive to keep the to maximize the grinding using these coarser grains, better for the process. So that's your sound. Now if we incorporate the grain, you can hear the difference, and you'll feel it as well. That's one of the things that I've learned is the The sound and the feel of it will actually give you quite a bit of information what's going on. So this particular experiment was my third, and it went one step beyond the first two, because now I'm using split face granite. The earlier experiments, so the first experiment I did was again with black granite, grinding down these striations or these cut marks from a straight saw. They usually use a piece of steel rope and abrasive, and the rope spins around, and that's one way to cut in the modern era. The main lesson I learnt during that particular experiment was to add fresh abrasive more regularly. That's that sound. You really want to hear that crunchy sound. That tells you you're really grinding as maximum speed. Second experiment was essentially it was the same, but then I was just using again black granite, but this had the circular saw marks. I had, from my first attempt, I knew to add fresh abrasive, keep that up, but the mistake I made was that I used a small block. In this particular one, I'm using granite on granite. I was still experimenting which one is the best, but I used a small granite sandstone block, basically something that would fit into the palm of your hand. If I'd used a larger stone, I would have completed that particular job even faster. Even so, it only took me just over an hour to complete, 1 hour and 4 minutes. Both of those stones are easy to, even this larger one I could have held by hand, one hand, and completed the action. I'll link that video, this experiments in black granite, there, and also a recent one I posted recreating allegedly giant circular saw marks using nothing but a small hand saw made of copper, because in there I speak about abrasives and the nature of abrasives. However, split face granite, that's the next step up, and let's talk about surface area. So before we go into the surface area, it's important, after only 30.5 minutes using just Stone Age technology on split face black granite, we've already come quite a distance. So every once in a while I pause just to inspect. Very smooth. I just use this chalk test. You can see the amount of dark spots is becoming even less. The blue and the orange are the two faces that are grinding together, and if we do a and highlighted there in white is the original condition of the stone. So you see the comparison of those pits of those dark spots removed. This primitive Stone Age technology for grinding is just very, very fast, very effective, and we can measure the area, and then we'll look at other sites. A few important notes on the process is, now firstly, because I'm working a small block, I'm working alone. But if you're working a larger block in a larger site, with Pumapunku, Great Pyramid, wherever, you'd obviously be part of a team and more likely have an assistant who they are walking around checking the water, adding fresh abrasive, picking up the mud and reapplying it, so that the people grinding are continually in motion. This would again greatly increase the speed, not greatly, but it would significantly increase the speed. And it's also very important to keep the mud-water mixture appropriate, because as we'll see in a moment, the plates can become locked together. I mentioned in the earlier experiments in grinding, but if you haven't seen that, it's that suction cup effect which can work against you if you're not keeping your mix right, will actually also be of assistance if you do keep your mix right. Now, for instance, we just saw the block was sticking to the side, so people polishing the side of the Pumapunku blocks or the Serapeum, wherever, a heavy stone, the stone is supported by the weight of the mud. So the difficulties I thought that would be in polishing the sides or even the underside, the mud will actually help you, as long as you have that experience to know how to keep the right mix of mud and water and all those things together. So what can work against you can actually work for you as well. And again, with a short amount of experience, I worked this out. I'm sure that generations upon generations who had been working stone would have worked these things out as well.
Now, worth noting this noise. I can hear now the two surfaces are really starting to mate closely. Also, the suction cup effect is becoming quite strong. So, by the feel and by the hear of it, again, it's telling me where my progress is at. So I'm getting very close. I won't peel the mud off just yet, but I'll keep going in a little bit more, and just to hit around the hour mark, and then we'll see how far we've come. Okay, again I'm adding some abrasive, and again you'll hear that sound of the crunching and the grinding, which is telling you that there's material is being removed at a fast rate. And again, it's these well, you can literally feel it and you hear it, and so it's like after doing a few experiments like this, the amount of what you learn. And it's also interesting to note that this is it's a bit like meditation. Now, I expected when I first did it to be very sort of mind-numbing. It was a bit disappointing at the start because I wanted results in a minute, so I'd be checking the stone. But if you just keep working at it, you get in the zone, you start to develop, you'll pick up the feel and the hear of it. The sounds and the senses will tell you quite a bit. And again, it draws you in when you do this work. It's interesting in that way. So there's the crunching sound. Again, that's, you can feel it, you can hear it. It's telling you that the grinding is being done at a faster rate as opposed to a polishing, which would be that more slippery sort of sound. Now, worth noting this noise.
A quick note on precision flatness. Here I have two sandstone blocks I just picked up from the ground around here. I'm using sandstone because I can demonstrate this in much shorter time than I would with granite. Very rough blocks. Just rub them together. Take a rough side, rub it again. Take another side and rub it again. Just grind it together. Very rough sides. Just keep grinding them, rubbing them together, and you will achieve precision flatness. And when I say precision flatness, I mean actual precision flatness, not the lost high technology definition of precision flatness. There is nothing special about achieving a flat surface when grinding stones, and I'm going to repeat that. There is nothing special or difficult or important or mystical about achieving flatness with stones. It's just a matter of taking two stones and grinding them together, and they will become flat. Now here I'm revolving it around and I get flatness quicker. I'm taking chaotic random surfaces, just grinding them together, just grind, spin it around, grind, and eventually I achieve one facet of the sandstone block becomes flat. Nature insists on it. It's not to achieve a flat surface is actually more difficult than to achieve a concave surface, for instance, such as the master grinders when they make hand grind optic level glass for telescopes, etc. So that was just sped up a little bit, but now put my straight edge against the sandstone and it's flat. Like this, impossible to achieve precision flatness, therefore lost ancient high technology. The only thing that is mysterious about it is the obsession with it. It is not special at all. It's to not achieve it would be more of a task than to achieve it. It's just grinding stones to one another and you will achieve flatness. Again, nature, physics, just the reality of this world insist upon this fact. So you'll often, lost high technology, it's peppered with amazing precision flatness, unexplainable precision flatness. Well, either because they don't know anything about stonework or flatness or modern tech, which is just a theme that runs through this lost ancient high technology rubbish, garbage it really is. If you don't have, grab some sandstone, rub it together, get a flat straight edge, test it. It is easy. It is as non-mysterious as the sun rising in the morning. It's always going to be there. Well, billions of years in the future, maybe not. But flatness is no mystery. It's not difficult. Get your hands dirty, do it. Don't believe the hype.
Almost stuck on there, so I need to break it off with a. Jesus, that's strong. So that's a good example to show when you're polishing the side of a sarcophagus, you don't need to turn it over, that the block is going to become, the weight of the block will be supported by the mud a lot of that time.
Another very important note is that the stone that's on the table, the stone that I'm grinding, also the stone that I'm grinding with, they're both of the same size. So after previous experiments, I learnt to use a bigger stone. Now, as we saw, that suction cup effect, whether you're on the side, the issue of a weight's not really a big one, but that stone that I'm using is a comfortable size, it's a comfortable weight on its own. They're both the same size, 19.5 by 40 centimeters, 870 square centimeters, or 0.84 feet. However, when I'm grinding, I'm moving the top stone around. So the bottom stone has a certain size, but the actual action I'm doing is larger than 19.5 by 40 centimeters. So I'm actually not grinding 0.84 square feet. I'm running over the side. I'm actually doing a bigger area. So if I'm doing the Serapeum box or whatever, that's a much, it's a bigger stone, and so the whole action is grinding. It's not running off the side. And so in reality, I'm doing an area something like 30 by 50 centimeters, give or take, depending. It's hard to be exactly sure, but in reality, the area I'm comfortably grinding is double the plate on the ground, on the table. It's closer to 1.61 feet squared, is actually what I'm grinding.
So that's the stone on the bottom. We have that, again, just to highlight the original stone split type, very, very uneven, and that was how we started. Now this is a stone that I've been using on the top. If we see how it is now, very few, just a few pits on the corners, pretty much this whole, barely some tiny little pits still to bring down, but the good 80% is smooth and pretty much flat, but we'll do the flatness testing later. So I'm going to do a little bit more grinding, so I want to bring sort of both these down to a reasonable level, and at least have one of these stones pretty much spot on. Okay, so that's one of the surfaces that we've ground down, and we get a flat straight edge. These are this is international sort of standards where these are produced to, and we get the light. Now you see there where there's a pit, so the light shines through. Now I'm not going quite for flatness yet, but there's still like a little bit of pitting. We see the light there coming through, but we're getting close to flatness. And we compare that to the original, so you see, well, of course this isn't going to be. So just by grinding two surfaces together, you're going to get closer and closer to flatness. I'm going to end the experiment here because I want to I want to use these two plates as and then with another to do the free plate technique of achieving, super precision flatness, and that's the hand method. The manual method still is at least as good, or essentially the same as the best machining techniques. The machine just does the grinding, the manual labour of it, but it still relies on the grinding surface A to B, then B to C, and then C to A. That's how before the machines were doing it. That's how people are doing it, and they still do it now when they want to calibrate their flat surfaces. So we're getting there to flatness, but we've achieved a surface which is, especially if I wipe it off and wet it up, you'll see. But this is black granite for one thing. And it's not just about polishing, it's about applying a sealant as well. So that's one of the, what was the sealant that they were using on the Serapeum boxes would be the question, and it's never really addressed that they were using a sealant. And there is some chemical residue which would give us hints of that, and so if we wet the surface up, you see it's black granite, and there is a shine, a luster to it. Now I'd have to get that cleaner. But anyway, that's for this part of the process. This is the other block on the other side as well. Do it in blue. Again, we still have some pitting left, but we've gone from a split surface and we've got it down to polishing. This is flatter and less pitted than most of the granite. For instance, on the walls of the king's chamber or the sarcophagus there, most of these other sarcophagus, for instance the Siron and the Caffrey Valley Temple, which are of granite, they're not polished at all, they're very rough. So we've done much better already when compared to the majority of the Serapeum boxes, and the next step will be to get that polished surface and to get a level of flatness. Well, firstly, those Serapeum boxes, you can see by the light, they are not flat the way that they are described as perfect flatness. You can just see that by the light, the way that the light ripples, it's not straight. For instance, in car shows, you can see if the bodywork is being rippled, and just by observing by the light. So that'll be the end for this one, and then we'll go on to the next phase. My third experiment along these lines was starting with split face granite, which would be the same type of face you would get from the quarrying technique of plug and feather, where large blocks can be extracted in minutes. And so we can turn split face into a highly honed flat surface in roughly about 1.5 square feet in just over 2 hours. And again, that was just my third experiment, and that'll be the point of the next video, because this would relate to many other sites. For instance, the granite walls in the Great Pyramid, the Siron, the Caffrey Valley Temple, and many of these other sites which include granite. Most of Egyptian construction is limestone or sandstone, with only small portions of granite, but that'll be for the next video. We've experienced with the first two experiments, turning split face into hone is actually very quick, only using Stone Age techniques, which happen to be exactly the same as modern techniques, only they've added high-speed motors and equipment to help. But Stone Age tech, it works, and the amount of time to achieve these things is only a tiny fraction of what the lost ancient high technology advanced precision machinery argument would claim, but they also would say that these things are impossible as well, so they're wrong on everything. So this is one of the tests used. I'm using a very, very thin straight edge, not a thick one, so this is, again, shows the, let's put it over another place, no light coming through, bit of, see if I can get a, okay, that's better in focus, straight edge, no light coming through. This is pretty much across the whole block. This is using a very, very thin straight edge, no light coming through. Let's just grab it. Here's just a block of wood. You know, you'd hardly call this a precision straight edge, but notice it's quite thick. So when you hold down these, you know, big, thick straight edges, looking for the light coming through them, they're actually not very good. So if I can use a thin one, you know, here we go. This is precision. This is all just done by hand. Now the granite flat plates are still used as a tool to gauge precision flatness, and they're done by hand. Now maybe now they're moving to machines, but still, whether it's optical